You know, your cousin Yossi gave
בגלל שזה
me.
שזה משהו שהולך לפי זה
Started
במקום
talking
בבית.
to him years ago.
נכון, נכון, סבבה.
Okay, I have to really. I have to go, that was like a real gift, and I have to go see which one it is.
That's really nice.
I know, it was a real gift.
אני הייתי הולכת על פחות.
Yeah, I looked it up online and there's
No, I didn't, I was.
פחות הרבה, פחות.
Oh, that's a set. That's a set of books. Not a single book.
I mean, it's in you do section of my library. I have
Okay, so now I think the YouTube is working. So we are in middle of chapter 26. In the middle of chapter 26.
It's page 114, and the word is the hymn. אתה שולח?
If you both play it on your phone, then people listening will think there's like a huge crowd here.
Perfect. It's called the investing paradox, and then more will arrive.
Then they feel like they miss something.
Investing paradox. Monkey see monkey.
Like in Israel now it started to be
People go where people are.
that they get like a fake dancer for weddings and stuff like that
They bring people to make it look full.
to make it look full, and then people like, okay, people dancing, we're gonna join them.
See, it works, yeah.
We just make it like we are a lot of people, and
Anyway, you want more clear.
Oh, no, you said that.
I'll get you another chair.
Another chair is on its way.
The family is okay.
So at the beginning of chapter 26, the Alter Rebbe is saying, you're on time, by the way, because we're just getting started.
Yeah.
So until chapter 26, the Alter Rebbe was describing the challenge. The challenge is to follow the wants of the godly instinct in you and not the wants of the animal instinct in you, and the various ways to do that. And the most common and most dependable way is to rely on the natural inherited love that every Jew has for God as an inheritance from Abraham, Isaac, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. We have it, it's inborn, it's in our DNA, and it's a fact of our existence. So when you're feeling like maybe doing the wrong thing and you remember that actually I'm the kind of person who actually loves God, which means I should probably do what he wants instead of what I want, because that's what part of what love means. It's easy to convince yourself to do the right thing instead of the wrong thing. That's now chapter 26, he says, okay, it's easy, but what about when the problem isn't coming from your own conflict, but the problem is coming from the fact that you're just not happy. You're melancholy. You're a little mildly depressed.
Over religious or in general in life?
That's what we're going to talk about now. The first part of the chapter, he was saying that you can't win a fight if you're not enthusiastic and lebedik. If you're not living with alacrity and optimism and happiness, and then like a wrestling match, if you have two people wrestling, even if one of them is much stronger than the other, if the stronger one is feeling sluggish and lazy and a little depressed, he can easily be beaten. So you have to make sure that when you're serving God, you serve Hashem with joy. And that's of course, the famous line, Ivdu as Hashem b'simcha, serve God with joy, means not just that you should be joyful in your service of God, but that your joy itself is part of your service of God. So when you're feeling unhappy, you're supposed to make yourself happy as part of, it's like one of the mitzvahs. You know, it's like there's a mitzvah to put a mezuzah on your door, and there's a mitzvah to light your Shabbos candles, and there's a mitzvah to put on tefillin. And then there's a mitzvah to be joyful in your service of God.
מצווה גדולה להיות בשמחה.
Right. So now he says, now the second half of the chapter, he says, now that we know the importance of being joyful, now the question is, practically, how do you do that? So the baseline, the Alter Rebbe says, assumes, is joy. Which means if you're not feeling joy, it's because something is disturbing your joy. Something's getting in the way of your happiness. Because you should normally be happy. That's your default setting is joyful. So he says in the next half of the chapter, he says there are two categories, two general reasons you could be unhappy. You could be unhappy about worldly matters, human issues, and you could be unhappy about spiritual matters. And he's going to deal with each one of them independently and suggest ways of overcoming that unhappiness, that sadness, depression, whatever.
It's not official as psychology book.
Psychology tried to be as effective as the Tanya, tried to come up with a new way of.
No, I think the closest to it is NLP.
This is what?
NLP.
No.
I think, no,
What is it called?
but
Yeah.
NLP is very close. The way you see stuff, like the way the rules of NLP goes.
Well, religion is rules.
No, but I'm not talking about religions. I'm talking about Tanya specifically.
I don't know NLP that much, but I know other more developed.
Pardon my ignorance. What does NLP stand for?
I don't,
NLP.
it's an acronym.
Okay, sounds very important.
It is. It's basically knowing how to.
It's a technique and not a principle.
All right, so let's see what Tanya says, and then we'll see if it's similar.
And then
Then we'll argue, right? Vihine, it's at the top of page,
113 in English and 114 in Hebrew.
Eitza hayutza, a suggestion that's been suggested. Letahir liboy, to cleanse your heart. Mikol eitzev v'nidno daigo. Mimile d'almo, from any hint of worry or any hint of sadness or worry about matters of the world, human matters. Even if it's matters of children or livelihood or your health or livelihood, meaning the three important things in life, in existence, in your human life. So not just sadness or worry about frivolous things or unnecessary things, but even if it's legitimate worries. Modaz is lakoil maimer razal. It is known to all the teachings of the sages in the Mishnah that says, just like the sages say, just as you bless God for the good in your life, you're also supposed to bless God for the bad in your life. The Talmud asks, which is how the Talmud works. There's the Mishnah makes statements and the Gemara asks questions. How can you bless God for the bad in your life just like you bless God for the good? First of all, the simple question is, how can you be grateful for bad things that happen in your life? And second of all, how could the Mishnah say, in a very literal sense, how can the Mishnah say that you have the same blessing? You say you bless God for the bad just like for the good. There's actually two different blessings.
Because everything is for good.
But when
You just don't know it now.
If you know God really, everything is very good.
right, but when something good happens in your life, there's a bracha hatov hametiv or shechiyanu. There are blessings for good things. When something bad happens, there's a separate blessing, baruch dayana emet. So there are two different blessings. So clearly, even in halacha itself, it recognizes the difference between when good things happen and when bad things happen. So you're right. The answer is because everything really is good. So let's see how he describes it. The Gemara says, "Lekabuli b'simcha," to accept it with joy. You accept joyfully the negative in life, just like you accept joyfully the positive. Just like you accept joyfully that which is joyful just like the joy that you have over the good that is apparent and obvious.
So the answer is unending gratitude in the face of adversity, no
Let's-
matter what.
But let's see why. It's not quite as
Thanks for the cancer knocking my teeth out is basically.
right. I'm saying it's not so I was
Dry.
dry. Yeah.
Thanks for keeping life interesting, I guess.
No, it's not. What's the word I'm looking for?
Struggle.
Languages are. I mean,
You're a struggle. You need to.
not so vague. That's what I was looking for. The Alter Rebbe isn't going to be that vague. He's going to get into it.
All right, let's see.
Ki gamzu l'toiva, because this too is for the good. When something negative happens, you're supposed to tell yourself this too is for the good. Rak she'eino niglas v'nidus le'enei basar. It's only that the goodness of it is not visible to the human eye. It's not revealed or visible to the human. Why? So the Alter Rebbe is saying when something negative happens, it's actually good also, only it doesn't look good to us. Okay, that's tricky. That's a religious, trying to pull a fast one on us. Yeah, gamzu l'tova. That's what he said.
גם זו לטובה, נשמח עוד הרשעה, everything that you can say like, is not bad yet.
Right.
יש לי סיפור מטורף על כיסאות מסאז' I will say maybe.
You say kisaot massage one more time, I'm going to demand that you donate one.
I wish I had the connections anymore. I left the company without taking one for myself.
Yeah.
But it was one day that it was a super tough weekend for all the company. Nobody sold. It was Black Friday weekend. They expected a lot and nobody sold. On Sunday, randomly, I catch the guy. I sold him 2 of the most expensive chairs, full price. The owners were so happy with me. They took me out on a bar to drink. Everybody
To
was
spend all the money we just made.
exactly. No, it was a beautiful sale, over $30,000 on chairs. Really nice. And I wake up in the morning, the day after. The moment I open my phone, I see a message from the wife of my client. Good morning, Taffy wants to cancel his order. And the first thing came to my mind, that my grandma used to say a lot, חייב אדם לברך על הרע כשם שמברך על הטובה. And I was like, same way I was
Which is
happy
that line we
yesterday.
just quoted, yeah.
Yeah. And
Let's say it in English.
a man should bless for the bad, same as he bless for the good.
Bless God for the bad in life, just like you bless God for good. That's the line we just read. Yeah.
And it was a beautiful lesson, and that's what I did.
Beautiful.
And it took a lot mentally, but then I understood why.
It's a big one. So here's the thing. We say on it's on Rosh Hashanah in the prayer we say Ve'otzarcha hatov lanu tiftach. What does it mean? Literally translates as the storehouse, the reserves, the treasures of good that you have to us open. Right? It's Hebrew, so the word's a little out of order.
Your good treasures will open to us.
Exactly. So the way you understand it is will open to us. The word lanu, which means to us, applies to the word tiftach, which means you will open.
Mhm.
That is the traditional understanding of it.
You will open the bank.
Maybe it's to open our eyes to see it.
In the Chabad prayer book, you see that the comma goes in a different. It's ve'otzarcha hatov lanu tiftach. The treasure of goodness for us, you will open.
Instead of
Which
the treasure.
Which means we're asking God for goodness that we consider good, not the kind of goodness that we believe is good, even though it doesn't feel good. In other words, we know that there are different kinds of good. There's the kind of good that feels good, it's delicious. And then there's the kind of good that hurts, but we know that God is good, and for some reason, this is a
That's
good
why
thing.
we're blessing people like
Good.
Tova, Nireh, V'Anigleh.
Right, exactly.
You're gonna see and
Exactly.
feel that it's good. You're not thinking
Exactly.
that might be gonna be good.
Right.
Didn't we just talk about how like we could use sadness as a motivator or something?
Yes.
Right, so like, if this is the case.
He's gonna talk about it.
Feels like a contradiction.
Most of the big
No, he's
fun
gonna
came from
discuss
sadness.
He's gonna.
You see, the way our tradition here in this class has become We ask all the questions before we start the class, and then we get to the answer. Instead of just learning the class and then discovering that we didn't have any questions to begin with.
I don't understand how we belong to
We are
the same
Jewish,
people
we must
sex
do
and
us.
Sheva Nishma.
Right, exactly.
How come? Well,
All right, I'm
Exactly.
I'm supposed to be thankful for getting my teeth.
We
Okay, let's
understand
do
that
it.
we didn't ask the first time, so now we continue asking.
Is there a line that it gets so bad that you don't say, Tanya, you don't
Yeah,
make
right when you think that God is no longer in control.
However,
So the answer is no.
so what about like,
And whatever example you come up with, I'm gonna have the same answer.
so I always thought like, I wanted to do a skit, 'cause a lot of the new guys that come to yeshiva or whatever, and they're like talking about their problems, and it's like, the rabbi's like, it's all for the good or whatever. And then have that same guy like get a phone call that like one of his parents or something died.
So I'll tell you a
And
funny
have all the
story.
kids go, yeah.
So let me tell you a story. There's a guy,
Awesome.
there was a guy, he's no longer in this prison, who was telling me, he was trying very hard to be observant and to, follow Torah. And he tells me one day that he had found out that his share of the family inheritance doesn't exist anymore. Basically, one of his sister, I think, walked off with it, and he's not going to get it. I said, "How much are you talking about?" He says, "Oh, it's like $130,000." I said, "You're talking about this like you lost a softball game." He says, "Well, Rabbi, you told me that if God wants me to have something, nobody can take it from me, and if I'm not meant to have it, there's nothing I can do to get it." So I was like, "Come on, man. I'm a rabbi. I got paid to say that." You lost $130,000. You crazy? Anyway, so let's learn. The Alter Rebbe is not going to leave us with a purely religious mantra of all is for the good. Suck it up. He's going to explain it. Let's remember that the Alter Rebbe started this section of Tanya. I don't remember which page. To understand all of this with a much greater understanding. The Alter Rebbe is not into vague explanations. He explains things thoroughly. So let's do it. Why is it that you're supposed to thank God for that which is painful, even though you don't feel the goodness of it, but you believe that this too is for the good? So he says, it's good, but only we don't get to see the goodness, right? So he explains, because he me alma de iskasya. This derives from the world of the concealed. Shelamayla me alma de isgalia, which is higher than the world of the revealed. Getting a little mystical. There are actually two worlds. Worlds means planes of existence, levels of existence. But worlds also means, remember, earlier in Tanya, we discussed how the word olam in Hebrew also means, or is related to the word he'elem, which means concealment. So it means different levels of concealment. If everything about God was revealed, we would melt into oblivion, because we can't stand it. Physical existence can't perceive God in the totality of who God is. It's not possible. The finite being can't absorb the infinite. So everything has concealment. The question is just how much concealment. So there is what's known as the world of the concealed and what's known as the world of the revealed. In a very, very simple sense, that which we do know is called the world of the revealed. That which we don't know is called the world of the concealed, which is synonymous with light and dark. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. Everything was dark, and then God created light, which means everything was not knowable, and then God started to let things become known.
Is it the God that concealed, or is it us that blind?
God conceals himself from us.
But we're not blind.
We're not blind to see.
It depends. Depends what we consider. Anyway. Shehu vavhei mishem havaya baruch hu. That is the world of the concealed is the vavhei of God's four-letter name. What's God's four-letter name?
Yud,
Yud, K, Vav, Ki, right? Four letters. The Yud and Hey is one segment of his name, and then Vav and Hey is the second segment. Yud and Hey is the world of the revealed, is the world of the concealed, and Vav and Hey is the world of the revealed. What does this mean? He will explain. Where's that? There's a verse in Psalms that says, Hanistarot laHashem Elokeinu, the concealed, that which is hidden is for God, and that which is revealed is for us and our children. V'haniglas lanu l'vanenu, and the revealed is for us and our children, our descendants, right? The word v'haniglot, if you spell it out in Hebrew, is vav hey niglot. Vav hey is revealed. That's where revelation happens, in the vav hey. In the yud and hey, there's no revelation. Why? So to be a little mystical, if you remember, we talked about the 10 attributes of the soul. There are 3 intellectual attributes and then 7 emotional attributes. So the Yud and Hey are the intellectual, are Chochmah and Bina, the first 2 of the intellectual faculties of the soul, or of God, Yud and Hey. And then Vav and Hey are the Vav is 6, so it's the 6 emotions, and then the last one, which is Malchut, which is the bridge to the next world, etc. The important point is that in your intellect, there's no revelation. Revelation happens in your feelings. In other words, how I relate to you is more about my feelings than about my ideas. My ideas can be completely active and functional and vibrant, even if there's nobody around. But my emotions are stifled if there's nobody around, because I have nobody to love or nobody to fear, nobody to relate to. So revelation, in that sense, expressing outward expression, starts in the Vav and Hey, not in the Yud. Okay, so that's what he means when he says, that's the mystical explanation for the idea that the world of the concealed is the Yud and Hey, but Alma de Isgalia, the revealed world, is Vav Hey Mishem Havai Baruch. The Alma de Iskasi Yud Hey, and the world of the concealed is in the Yud and Hey of Hashem's name. V'zeh shekosav, and that's why it says Ashrei Hagever Asher Tiasrenu Kol. That's why it says, fortunate is the person who God, I would imagine in many translations that would be translated as punishes, but chastiseth,
Yes.
torments, Yisurim. Yeah. What is Yisurim? Yisurim means painful experience. Yeah. So praiseworthy, fortunate is the one who is chastised, who is tormented, chastised, punished, whatever, has painful experiences at the hands of God. Yud K, the Yud and Hey, that name of God. Why specifically that name of God? There are many names of God that the Torah uses. Each time the Torah refers to God in some way, there's a reason why the Torah is using that particular name of God. So here, why is it fortunate that we're punished by God?
The answer is in the concealed Yud Hey.
The answer is that it's in the Yud Hey, that part of God, which means it's coming from a place in God that you can't understand. Why is that exciting?
Because it gives God.
We're getting there. The Lachin Amar Azal, and that's why the sages say, Ki asmeichem b'yisurim. Those who are joyful in receiving those painful experiences in life from God. Aleim HaKosav Omer, it is with regard to those people that the Torah says, Ve'oy havav kitzeis hashemesh b'gvurasai. Those who love him experience the sun coming out in its full glory, its full strength. In other words, when Mashiach comes, the sun will be, the Torah says, the sun will be at its full strength. Now the sun is concealed by a veil.
We're talking literal sun?
No.
That's why there is a global climate.
Yes, climate change is all because Mashiach is coming.
It's starting to shine.
So like when Abraham had his circumcision, and God wanted the travelers to not come by and bother him because he was the kind of guy who would, he ran a hotel, a bed and breakfast. Exactly. It says that God took the sun out of its out of its case, out of its protective sleeve, which means that it became too hot to travel, so nobody traveled. So Avram had a day off, and he was pained that he had nobody to do kindness with. So he was upset. So God said, "Okay, fine." He sent the 3 angels. Right, that story. The point is that the sun is concealed in a physical sense because that's a reflection of what's happening in the spiritual reality. Point is that when Mashiach comes, we will no longer need the cover, the veil over the sun to protect us. Why?
Because we'll have SPF built in.
Because in the spiritual reality, the reason that there is concealment, like why does God conceal himself? Because the physical creation, the physical human can't absorb that much godliness. It would hurt us to receive that much godliness, just like it would hurt us to receive that much of the sun.
But if we're made in his image, why would it hurt us?
Because we're made in his image with a lot of concealment.
So he concealed himself so we don't see. Not we don't see because we don't see.
Right.
That's what happens to us in Etadat. We try to know
Part of
more
it.
than what we should.
I don't know. Nishma kacha. Seems like it. Yeah.
I don't know.
It's a good theory. The point that he's making is, if imagine, we talked about Albert Einstein last night, we'll talk about it again. Imagine Albert Einstein is trying to explain his theory of relativity to a 6th grade math class.
Well, they know everything anyway.
Oh, yeah, I should have. Let's take it again.
If he explains it to them the way he understands it, how much of what he says are they going to understand? Nothing.
Yeah.
They will understand nothing. They won't understand the language he's speaking. They won't understand the references he's making. They won't understand anything he's saying. If he dumbs it down to their level, they'll understand it, right? Does that mean that if they don't understand it unless he dumbs it down, does that mean when he gives it to them in its full strength, he's talking gibberish?
No, they're just not capable to understand.
Exactly. He has to bring it down. He has to lessen it. He has to simplify it and make it really small compared to what it really is in order for the student to be able to receive it. So if God wants to give us kindness, but we can't fathom his mind, he has to give it to us in a much smaller form so that we could appreciate it. Otherwise, we're going to, like the kids.
We have to ask him. We have to expand our.
But you can't. You don't have that ability. A 6th grade kid cannot understand Albert Einstein's theory of relativity no matter how hard the 6th grader tries. The 6th grader is not capable of being there. You need a lot more. So that's another example that's very often used. Huh?
It's like developmental, it's like a process.
Right. So so another example that's used very often is you see a child playing with a knife. What do? You take the knife away. Why? Why do you take the knife away? So why do you care if the child hurt themselves?
Because he's not capable to judge what's the
No, why do you care if the child hurts themselves?
Because it's your
It's
child.
my responsibility.
Why?
Because I'm old
You-
enough to
you take-
know.
You take the knife away because you're kind. Because you're a good person. You take the knife away from the child, right? Because you're a good person. It's an act of pure kindness.
Yeah.
How
but
does the
if I
chi-
don't do that,
One second,
then
how
I'm
does-
I'm evil.
Right. How does the child perceive your action?
You take it away.
You're evil.
The opposite.
How could the child receive a kindness from you and think that you're evil?
Because it doesn't understand.
Because you have
He
a
doesn't.
different judgment.
Because he doesn't have the information that you have.
Mhm.
Another example that's very often used is you take somebody out of the jungle and bring him into an operating room. And he sees these people strapped a guy down on the table and they're cutting into him with knives. He screams, "Yeah, barbarians, call the police." Turns out that these people are saving this guy's life, right? How could he be so completely far from the truth? How could he look at something and perceive the exact opposite of what's actually going on? The answer is because he doesn't have the information. If God is trying to give us a goodness at his level, at his understanding, at the divine comprehension of goodness, do we expect that we are able to understand that? Think about what's the difference between a child and an adult? 15 years. Compare that to the difference between a human and the creator of all things. So if we're completely comfortable accepting that there is an absolute unbridgeable gap between the intellect of a child and the intellect of an adult, and that's why it makes perfect sense for an adult to do something to a child that the child perceives as pure evil, and yet we all know that it's kindness, and that's only because of a 15-year difference of understanding, why can't we make the same assumption about God where the difference is infinite?
My question is, why would he have something that's good for you be hidden in the first place? What's the benefit of that over it just being revealed?
So if you want the reason, one of the reasons you could say is, it's a test of faith.
No, so you can control. That's what he likes to do.
So if we're here to do mitzvot, and then all of a sudden, boom, leukemia, you have 6 months to live. Why would God limit a Jew's ability to do mitzvot in the world all the way down to 6 months?
Why limit?
What if it's not leukemia? What if it's, I mean, first of all,
Anything.
to God, this person with the leukemia is going to live to the age of 45 instead of the age of 90, right?
6 months.
Instead of to the age of 90.
Yeah, okay.
So to God, how big is the difference between 45 and 90?
But if we're here
To the
do
infinite,
mitzvot-
compared to the infinite.
But mitzvot, they're infinite.
So you can ask the same question. Why does God limit our lives to 120 years? Why doesn't he let us live infinitely and then we'll serve God forever? Why is anything limited? If God has the ability to give us infinite, give us infinite. Why limit
Our
us?
mitzvot, they're infinite, and he wants us to do mitzvot
So-
all the time.
so-
To fill us infinite, then why would he limit anybody at all?
So you could, that's my point.
Yeah.
Why would, you could say that about any limitation. Why does God make us have to sleep half of our
That's
lives?
the whole point of it.
This is how he designed us, and we have to work within his design.
Mhm.
But you can ask, why does he limit us in any way you want, if the question is really about what he wants from us? The answer is, this is what he wants. The question is, when we receive something, when something happens in my life that is painful, and the Talmud says I'm supposed to be grateful for it, how can I accept it and say, okay, God knows best? How can I be grateful for it? That's the question we're trying to answer. Let's stick to that question.
We just
How can
about
you be
faith.
grateful for it? The answer is, if you understand that which, the good that you do understand is obviously a very small kind of good. It's like getting an ice cream cone when you're 4 years old. Getting an ice cream cone from your father is not all that good. To the child, it's amazing. Best thing that ever happened to me. This is the best day of my life. In reality, it's not that good. Having the knife taken away from you, that's really, really good. So what you perceive to be really, really good is actually a very, very miniature version of good. It's a tiny little favor. What you perceive as painful is really, really good. Well, if that's true between a father and a child, or a parent and a child, then certainly it's true between a human and our creator. If it's simply a matter of the strength of your intellect, then the logic carries perfectly. That's the idea.
Also, when you're suffering in this world, it's part of the idea to take your punishment from the next world, and you're gonna get like.
Maybe that's the kindness. But the point is that the kindness is a kindness that you can't see. And the reason you can't see it is because it's too big for you to see. Just like the child who doesn't understand the kindness of.
So that's why you stay with what you perceive as unkindness as a negative, to see the good, right?
But you won't be able to see the good. We're talking about where you cannot see the good.
So that's faith.
So
Why
he-
do we even ask for something?
so
if
he's
we don't
gonna-
know it's good?
So he's going to say it's not faith, it's love, which we'll get to in a second. Why do we want?
Why do we even pray for all that?
Good question.
What we consider
Right.
good?
Why do you pray for what we consider good if we know that what he considers good is far better?
That's exactly what we started with.
Right.
Shara Shamayim Tachlan.
Exactly. God says, I give you permission, Ki'ilo. It's as if God says to us, I give you permission to ask me for your version of good, even though mine is better, and I won't get offended. Because I'm the one that limited your understanding, so I understand why you want your version. Makes sense.
So we're just like a bunch of children throwing tantrums all the time.
Yeah.
I am the multiple.
Yeah. So it's ve'oihavav ketzesh Hashem es bigvuraseh. That's what I'm saying. It's those who love God that will receive the sun in its full strength. What does that mean? That means it doesn't say those who have faith in him. It says those who love him. Why? Because if you know that everything that comes from God is kindness, and those things that are the most difficult to understand are the greatest forms of kindness, proof is the fact that you can't understand it in this theory, then the painful experience means I am receiving a greater gift from God than the stuff that tastes good. And if it's greater kindness from him, I want it because I want him. If what I want is a connection to God and closeness with God, then any kind of closeness is good. And the closer I get to the real him, the more I want it. Like, for example, I want to get closer to the sun, even though I know I'm going to get burned.
Icarus.
We don't want that. We don't want that because I don't want to get burned. But if the analogy is God is like the sun in this analogy, and I want closeness with God, then I'll take the painful physical experience if that means a more godly, a closer to God spiritual experience.
חיצית שומעים חרפתם ואינם משיבים, ואוהביו כצאת השמש בגבורתה.
Is that the same sentence?
Yeah. I mean, for the ones who hear, like you say something to someone and he shut up and doesn't answer.
Yeah.
הנעלבים
Look it
ואינם
up.
עולבים, שומעים
Yeah, I don't know. You
חרפתם
can look it
ואינם
up.
משיבים.
Well, the pasuk itself, "Oavav ketzet hashemesh," is in the pasuk "Oavav ketzet hashemesh" is in Tanakh. But the Gemara is quoting it in that context. Ki hashemesh. Now he explains this. Ki hashemesh he me ahavosei kirvas havaya yoser mikol chay olam hazeh. I'm sorry. Ki hasimcha. Ki hasimcha he me ahavosei kirvas havaya yoser mikol chay olam hazeh. Because the joy that a person has with even the painful experiences in life is because of the love and the pleasure that he gets from knowing that he has closeness with God. And that pleasure is greater than all of the pleasures of the physical. As it says, Ki tov chastecha mechaim. There's another verse that says, your kindness is greater than life, etc. V'kirvas Hashem, and closeness to God, Hi b'yeser seisu me'almod umayla le'en ketz be'almod iskasya. And the closeness to God is much, much more powerful when you're receiving from the world of the concealed. Kisham chevenuze, that's where his strength really lies. V'yoshev b'seised elyon, and God really dwells in that which is concealed. V'alkein zochel etzeis hashemesh b'gvurasi l'aseh lava, and that's why when Mashiach comes, those who have real pleasure and closeness with God receive the sun in its full strength, meaning shehi yitzias chama min arteka. That's when the sun comes out of its sleeve, its shield. Shehi mechuse boy b'olam hazeh, which in our world, in our experience of reality, the sun is concealed in some kind of a veil. And in the future, it is revealed from this cover. Dahainu, this means that then when Mashiach comes, when the world is purely godly, then the world of the concealed will be revealed. The Yizrach v'yor begilu rava atzam, and it will shine, and it will glow, and it will shine with a tremendous revelation. L'kol hachosim boy b'olam hazeh, to all those who really long for God in this world. U'mistoifefim b'tziloi tzeil hachochma, and those who mistoifefim, those who are enveloped, those who are in the shade of those who are shielded in the shade of God's wisdom. Shehu b'chinas tzel, God's wisdom is kabbalistically, it's considered like shade, v'loy oira, not light, v'toiv niris, and goodness that is revealed without. In other words, essentially what he's saying is that when something painful happens in the physical, when something that you consider bad happens in the physical, you accept that joyfully because that means God is expressing a kindness to you that you cannot fathom. There are so many examples, so many stories of things that happen that are very painful in people's lives, and it turns out to be an amazing thing. It's a great blessing.
Like you're missing your flight and then the airplane is getting a crash or
Right.
something.
Right. So all kinds of stories like that. Mhm.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a lot of things that a lot of time you can.
There's a story in
See
the
later.
Gemara about it, about the guy got a nail in his leg, in his feet,
There-
and
there-
then he missed the ship, and the ship was drowning.
Yeah, my brother has a story with he was a counselor in summer camp, and one of the kids fell and broke. He was roller skating and fell and broke his arm, and he had to go to the hospital. Got a cast put on. It was terrible, real break. And the parents were furious. They were going to sue the camp, and it was just this big fight, and it was just nasty. And camp was over, and that was that. And then a month later was 9/11. And my brother called the family because this kid's father worked in the World Trade Center.
Mhm.
And it turns out that he went that day to have the cast removed. The appointment to have the cast removed was on 9/11, so he didn't go to work that day. So there are a gazillion stories like this. The point is only that sometimes the reason those become stories is because those are the exception where we find out what else is happening. Remember Paul Harvey? The rest of the story with Paul Harvey? You're the only one that would remember it here, other than me.
Paul Harvey.
You, Paul Harvey. And now you know the rest of the story. No, Paul Harvey? No? Okay, I'm all alone. He was a radio personality. He had this way of telling you know it? You know Paul Harvey?
I don't know.
No? He would tell these stories that don't make any sense at all, and then he would conclude the whole presentation with one little detail that he left out of the story, and then he would say, and now you know the rest of the story. So that's essentially, every once in a rare while, we get to know the rest of the story. But 99 times out of 100, we don't know what's going on because we just don't have the information.
Or we're too busy moping.
And that's why we don't have the information.
So
In any case,
when
the point-
things go, when life gives you lemons, you do the lemonade thing, right? So,
Not necessarily.
So
so don't make lemonade.
what the Rebbe is saying here is that life doesn't give you lemons. There is nothing negative. What you perceive in the physical experience as negative is actually a much greater form of kindness that comes to you in a way that feels to you in the physical like something negative. That's
So
what he's saying.
leukemia is kindness.
Yes.
Yes. And then that means, oh, I have 6 months to live. That basically means clear out all the nonsense if you want to look at it half empty or half full.
Every
And a lot of time you
experience.
can see that kind of people that get into the edge, they just start to live on this time.
Yes.
Till now they just was in their routine and then they really start to live.
But really, this is how life goes. We met you on our worst time of life.
Yeah,
So
I
we
think,
wouldn't get here without it.
yeah, I think also one of the
I
fears.
don't like being associated with the worst time of your life.
I think one of the first stories that I told you about my father, like when I see him really painful and I ask him like how you feel, and you really say like Odu Lashem Kitov, and you see that you really mean it. Because he have his family next to him and in alive, and that's it. That's what he need, and he was
Yeah.
150% happy with that.
So that's the Alter Rebbe is saying, is that something that is painful isn't necessarily bad. You just don't have the rest of the information. Look, the fact is that there are plenty of examples of pain that you would celebrate because you know the rest of the story. I mean, you ever, no, even like tattoos or just working out. Everybody who works out knows they're going to be in pain afterwards. Why do you do it? You know you're going to be in pain when you're done.
Never.
Then you're not doing it right.
That's
Simple thing, just a pregnant and get
If you
cured.
don't,
Not the way it works.
I'm talking about people who are trying to, the bodybuilders who are trying to build the muscle quickly.
Yeah, you have to tear the muscle.
You have to tear the muscle in order for it to grow back stronger. Childbirth. I mean, you can make up your own examples. You know the concept. The concept is very simple. You embrace the pain that you understand. You actually appreciate it.
Yeah.
Now, false labor, that's evil, right? Because with that kind of pain, you're supposed to have a baby at the end of it.
But even then,
So the reason you're upset about the pain is because you don't understand why it was necessary. If you understand why it's necessary, you're happy with it.
growing pain.
but then you can see parents that like do understand or do have this faith and they can actually understand and believe that the whole labor was the mission.
Right. So that's my point. My point is that when we're in pain and we're upset about it, the reality is we're simply lacking information. With a little bit more information, we would accept it happily. That's the point. Anything negative happening in your life, a little bit more information, and it could turn around 180 degrees and become something really wonderful. Kid broke his arm, saved his father's life. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy I broke my arm. There are so many examples of that. You're in a lot of pain, and then you end up with a baby. I mean, it's obvious to everybody. You don't need to belabor the point, pardon the pun, that pain can always be explained into something good if you have the information. That's what he's saying about God's kindness. Everything that happens is goodness. Sometimes we just can't handle the information. We can't perceive the information. And that's why God allows us to pray for the kind of goodness that we do appreciate instead of the kind of kindness that we know he knows is better, but we don't appreciate.
Yes, God, send me more challenges. That's what I need.
We pray every morning, please do not challenge me. Every single morning in the prayer, please do not give us challenges. And then we get challenges every single day. Now, that is all with regards to matters of the physical. The answer is when something bad happens that makes you sad in the physical, just remember it's not bad. You're just not privy to the rest of the story. Really, it's good. Now, what about when something is bad and it really is bad? What's an example of that?
I don't know, October 7th.
The example for that was a rhetorical question introducing the next subject. Hello, people.
You just didn't have the flashlight. I wanna know you okay.
Okay, something that is bad.
However, continuing in the text, when you're upset over matters of spirituality, over godly troubles, like for example, you sinned, you offended God, and you're upset about it. What do you do about that? You can't say, well, it's not really bad. Yeah, it's bad. God said don't, and you did. Or God said do, and you didn't. It's bad. So now you have to be a lot more clever than the last one. The other version, that was easy. Now, when things really are bad because you did something to offend God, now you have to be clever and come up with a good solution to this. So, obviously, you don't have to mention the fact that when you're sad during your prayer or during your service of God and you're feeling your spiritual shortcomings, that's not going to work because you have to pray to Hashem with joy. You have to serve God with joy. So obviously, while you're serving God, the sadness over your spiritual failings is not acceptable because you have to serve God with joy. So you can't be sad then, obviously. But even somebody who's the average you and me, we're involved in our regular human affairs, business or whatever. If while you're in the middle of your human activities, you're in the middle of your own business, and thoughts of spiritual lowliness come to your mind, and you get upset about how spiritually deficient you are, what do you do then? Biyadua, it is obvious, it's clear, shehu tahbulas hayetzer, that this is a tactic of your evil inclination. This is your animal instinct. Kedei lahapilo yachar kach b'taivos chas v'shalom kenoida, to get you upset, because when you're upset, you will indulge in physical pleasures. The reason you allow yourself to get upset is because you know that when you're upset, you will feed yourself foods that you shouldn't eat, and you'll have experiences that you shouldn't have. You'll go seeking pleasure, and that's why your system subconsciously wants you to be upset, so that you go seeking pleasures, because it wants pleasure.
That's what's called addiction to the pain?
Not to the pain, but to the sadness.
But, yeah.
Because sadness makes you want to go.
Then you justify all the rest.
Yeah, like depression eating or whatever. Why do you eat when you're depressed? because when you're sad,
And I'm sad because I eat.
right? So you eat when you're sad, because when you're sad, your defenses are down,
Yeah.
and you'll do anything to get a little bit of pleasure. So he's saying the tact, it's like a strategy of the evil inclination to get you to be sad so that you will go seek pleasure, because the animal instinct wants pleasure. So in order to get you to go seeking pleasure, your animal instinct makes you feel sad. And the amazing thing is that the animal instinct will make you feel sad about how, oh, I'm poor me, I didn't do the mitzvah properly. Now I'm sad. That worked. Let me go have a pizza. In other words, you're not really sad about the sin. You just want to be sad because you want to have an excuse to eat a bag of chips. It has nothing to do with the sin. That's what the Alter Rebbe is saying. She'im loy came, because if this were not the case, from where are you coming up with genuine sadness? Machmas avas Hashem or yirasai be'emtza asakav. Suddenly you have a surge of love for God in the middle of your business day, or a surge of fear of heaven in the middle of your work day. All of a sudden you're remembering how much you love God and how distant you are. Why are you thinking about that in the middle of finish ringing up the customer, let him go home? And where did this thought come from in the middle of your workday? Remember what he said earlier in Tanya, that the Beinoni, which is you and me, hopefully, the only time we feel a rush of love is
Pizza.
when we intend to. The only time we have a real rush of love for God is when we think about God, when we contemplate God, when we're in our God mode, and we can inspire in ourselves some real sense of love for God. But if I'm just in the middle of doing something else, I'm middle of softball, and all of a sudden, hey, wow, woe is me, I forgot to put on tefillin yesterday. Why are you thinking about this now? So the Alter Rebbe is saying, when you're in the middle of doing human activities and suddenly you find yourself upset about your spiritual shortcomings, don't fall for it. It's not real. It's bogus religiosity just to get you sad, because when you're sad, you'll go do something stupid. And that's what we want. That's what we're trying to, that's what the evil inclination wants. Vihine, this means, whether this sadness comes to you in the middle of your service of God, what in studying Torah or middle of your davening, whether it happens not during your service of God, in other words, in your regular mundane times, this is what you need to take to heart. Here's the answer. This is not the right time for true sadness. This is not the right time for true sadness. Even if you find yourself worried about really serious transgressions. You see, the Alter Rebbe says, now's not the time to worry about it. And you say, oh, but if you knew what I'm thinking about, you wouldn't say that. The Alter Rebbe says, yeah, I know what you're thinking about, and I'm saying it anyways. Even severe sin, now is not the time. So when is the time? For that you have to have set, established times. At the right moment, of the time that's most auspicious or most useful for that. The Yishuv Adas, when your mind is relaxed, is calm. To think about the greatness of God to whom you sinned. Not just, oh, woe is me, I'm such a bad guy, I sinned. That's not how you apologize. You don't apologize by saying, I'm such a bad guy. You apologize by saying, you're such a great God. So if you can't stop and think seriously about how amazing God is, the God to whom you sinned, then your sadness is bogus. It's just self-pity. Don't fall for it. Kedei, in order, so that through that contemplation about the greatness of God, you'll have a genuinely broken heart, with true sadness, not just self-pity. And this special time is explained elsewhere. For those super holy people, it's at that prayer that we mentioned last week, the Tikkun Chatzot, at the midnight prayer, where you get up at midnight and you cry over the destruction of the temple, and then you stay up all the way till the morning studying Torah, and then you go about your day. You and me are not going to do that anytime soon. So for us, when is the Sha'at HaKosher? When is the best time for this kind of contemplating the greatness of God and how he really deserves better from me?
When we pray.
When we recite the Shema, when we recite the Shema before you go to bed. Before you go to bed at night and you recite the Shema, you're supposed to think about how your day went, how amazing God was to you today, and what did he get for his investment in you? What did he invested so much in me today. What did he get in return? And when you realize,
we do also before you go into sleep.
You can never return what
And that-
he's invested into you because God's infinite and we're not.
but you just said the mitzvahs are infinite. At the beginning of the
The
class,
mitzvahs
you
are
said the mitzvahs, so he needed more mitzvahs from you. So that's what you do. When you say the Shema, that's when you're supposed to really get upset about how you really should have done much more for him than you did. But just right in smack in the middle of the day, why are you thinking about that in the middle of your day? It's just a gimmick. It's just a trick to get you to be sad about yourself so that you'll end up doing something you're not supposed to do. On the contrary, make sure that you have when you have those thoughts, you find yourself, feeling like, oh, I'm such a bad Jew. I didn't do the mitzvah. I could have done better or whatever. Tell yourself, you know what? This is a very valid concern. I'm going to make an appointment tonight at 11 o'clock at night when I'm going to sleep. I'm giving myself 10 minutes to think about it. I'm going to think about it then. And then when you have your appointment, you stick to that appointment truly. And at 11 o'clock, see if you can come up with that same sadness. Probably won't show up because you're really not that upset about the fact that you committed that sin. If you can develop that sadness now, that's good. That's successful. And that will lead to a much better tomorrow. It won't just lead to eating another bag of chips. That's the amazing thing. The Sham there, wherever it is that it tells us about in the section of Tanya about Teshuvah, which is 3 sections of Tanya from here. There, where he explains the special time for having these contemplative thoughts about the greatness of God and how you're letting him down. Sham nishbar gamkein there, nisbar gamkein there. It's also explained. Ki miyad achash nishbar liba beitim kvoim haim. Right after you find yourself with this broken heart in that specific time, oz yosir ha'etzev miliba legamrei. Then you completely remove the sadness from your heart. V'yamin emuna shalema, and you believe with a complete faith. Ki Hashem hever chatase, that God removed the sin because you apologized sincerely. V'rav l'sloyach, and God is abundant in his forgiveness. What does that mean? God is abundant in his forgiveness. If I harm you in some way, and then I apologize, you forgive me because you're a good guy. If I then do the same thing again, and I apologize, you have to push yourself a little harder to find forgiveness in your heart, right? If I do it a 4th time, you're like, get out of my life. You're crazy. God is Rav Lisloach. You can do the same thing 1,000 times. If you apologize sincerely, he accepts it. Of course, it's no big deal for him to do that because he knows whether you're doing it sincerely, whereas a human being can't know whether you're apologizing sincerely.
Just the button for us. We need to work on it.
But the point is, God is Rav Lisloach because as long as you're sincere, it doesn't matter how many times you did it. If the apology is a sincere one, he will accept it. So he's Rav Lisloach. V'zuhi hasimcha amitis b'Hashem, and this we've just discovered is the true joy in your relationship with God. Haba achar etzev, which comes after true sadness. Now you know the rest of the story. So when he said achar mikol etzev yeh moisar, there's a benefit to sadness. This is the sadness he was referring to, which you mentioned earlier. The sadness he's referring to, King Solomon is referring to when he says that there is a benefit to sadness, is the sadness that you plan, you strategize, you schedule into your day or your night, as it were, and you contemplate God, and you think about God's greatness, and you think about God's kindness to you, and then you think about what you did for him in return, and you get really bummed about how little you did for him in return, and then you apologize, and you decide tomorrow is going to be much better, and now you're feeling a closeness with him, just like when you're in a human relationship and you mess up and you apologize, the relationship is then stronger. That's the joy that you have, the benefit that you have from well-planned and well-placed sadness. but never spontaneous sadness. That's what the Alter Rebbe is saying. Anytime you feel a spontaneous sadness, reject it. There is never a good reason for a spontaneous sadness. If you're feeling sad spontaneously, block it out, schedule it, and revisit the subject when you have a clear mind and when it's the right time.
What if you feel happy spontaneously about the sins that you did?
There are people.
That's a big problem.
There are people you can see about that. I just read this great joke. This guy says he went to the rabbi and he says, "Rabbi, I'm in love with this girl. I don't know what to do." So the rabbi says, "If you're in love with her, marry her." He says, "No, Rabbi, I'm already married." So he says, "Okay, so love your wife the way you love this girl." He says, "Oh, I can't. This girl's amazing." So the rabbi says, "Okay, so divorce your wife and marry this girl." He says, No, I can't. I love my wife also." So the rabbi says, "You know what? You need to convert to Christianity." So the guy says, "How will that help me?" He says, "It won't help you at all, but at least you'll bother the priest instead of me."